It doesn't matter what other teams are doing in recruiting. It only matters what the Razorbacks are doing. We'll talk about that as well as the improvement of special teams throughout the whole football season and Razorbacks taking on Hofstra in North Little Rock this weekend. It's all coming up on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by NetSuite. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. Head to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA for a special end-of-year financing for the #1 financial system for growing business. It's Friday. We have finally made it to the weekend, folks, and it is so good to finally get closer to the end of the year, get closer to the Christmas holiday, which is amazing how fast this year has gone by. But it's funny because with recruiting, and obviously the Razorbacks ending their stretch in the recruiting class, well, I wouldn't say it's ended because there's still some opportunities in the late signing period, as well as some transfer portals and all that. But essentially, you know what it looks like. And something that was brought to my attention that at least some Razorback fans were talking about, and I thought was kind of interesting, was the fact that Arkansas finished with a pretty solid class, all things considered. They were a top 20 class, which we know how important that is to have nationally. And in the SEC, they ranked, ninth or seventh, kind of just depending on who and what outlet you look at. But that's not to say that's uncommon, because I talked about it yesterday where I look at recruiting in tiers, not about just number rankings. If, LSU is 8th and Arkansas is 9th, and, you're telling me there's a massive difference between the two? I don't think so. I think that they're doing just fine for all things considered. But one thing that was pointed out to me and was being talked about a lot was like Texas A&M, for instance. Texas A&M finished with the #1 recruiting class in the country. And they had Max Johnson, the LSU quarterback, announced today that he is transferring to Texas A&M. So there is no doubt, as much as I hate to say it, there's no doubt that Texas A&M won signing day. I mean, they blew it out of the water. And other places like Kentucky was kind of interesting to see that they finished 4th in the country in the SEC in recruiting, which we know that Mark Stoops has done a fine job. Missouri finished 5th in the SEC, got a 5-star players, 7 4-star players, and people were like, "Man, look at Missouri! Look at what they're doing, man. This is going to be tough and whatever." And you know what? None of that stuff matters to me. I do not care about what Missouri's doing, about what Texas A&M's doing, or anything like that when they have one good class and suddenly, as a Razorback fan, you become nervous. You become scared. You become, oh, geez. Man, well, we got to up our game, man. We can't be finishing behind Missouri in recruiting. We can't be finishing behind Kentucky. Like, we can't have that. Here's my thing on recruiting also, since, again, we've talked so much about it, but recruiting classes are fun to be #1 in. Like, I would love it if Arkansas was ever #1 and had the #1 recruiting class in the country. I think we all would. We'd all be all about that. And we'd brag about it and, talk trash to other programs about it. It's all well and good. But if you really look at what a lot of these recruiting classes and these teams that have had big-time recruiting classes has equated to, you'll realize and you'll understand that, yeah, recruiting is a major factor of being successful. There's no doubt. But unless you have the coaching and the consistency to be able to do something with it, it does not matter. Like Texas A&M might be one of the prime examples of this. Now, I know that Jimbo Fisher, I guess he's entering into his 4th season at Texas A&M. And or is it 4th or 5th? He's been there for a few years. But he's basically gotten a top 5 recruiting class, top 10 sometimes every single year. Even A&M did that before he arrived. When Kevin Sumlin was there, they were able to get recruiting classes out the wazoo. Every single year, they're right there in the mix. But you think about it. What has it given them? Like, what has it gotten Texas A&M? I mean, they had a pretty good year last year. They went 9-1. They had a pretty good year and like with Johnny Manziel, but they had all these quarterbacks they couldn't figure out afterwards. Like, it didn't equate to championships. It didn't equate to winning the West. At least not yet. So what does it matter? And then Missouri is kind of the biggest thing. It's like you start saying, well, wow, look at this recruiting class that they signed. They got this number one wide receiver, and they got these 4-star players all out the wazoo there too. Like, this is something we should be worried about. Like, what about Missouri? They're seeming to up their game. Are you worried about Missouri? I mean, seriously, if you're a Razorback fan, are you worried about Missouri becoming this prominent team, this powerhouse? I'm not. Because at the end of the day, it's still Missouri. And at the end of the day, it's still Texas A&M. Not to say that those teams won't be good. Not to say that those teams will lose to Arkansas every time, because I'm sure there'll be times where Arkansas doesn't beat those teams. It's going to happen. It's the SEC. So don't get it twisted. But my whole point is that you don't need to look at it in the lens of one recruiting class in 1 year and suddenly you're going to be reverted back to being ninth in the SEC. You're going to be reverted back to just being a common team, a team that barely is scraping by to try to make a bowl game. Like, that's not what's going to happen, folks. Yes, recruiting matters. Yes, getting talent on the campus matters. But you know what matters just as much? Coaching. And at Arkansas, you have one of the best coaching staffs in the SEC when it comes to development, when it comes to ideology, when it comes to philosophy, and honestly, when it comes to recruiting. You're going to be just fine. And the thing is that Arkansas with Sam Pittman has a great plan in place where, again, they address needs. They're going to be a team that has a lot of veterans on the team next year. You're going to be a team that's going to have a lot of key players returning. And the fact is that all those players that are returning, they're going to be better. Like, KJ Jefferson will be a better quarterback next year. Dominic Johnson, Rocket Sanders, those guys are going to be better running backs next year. Your safeties and defensive backs are going to be returning. They're going to be better next year because you're going to have development. And who's to say that with these transfer portal guys that they won't make a huge difference as well? Like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be better. You're going to be all right. That's the main thing. But don't let all this pomp and circumstance of what these other recruiting classes and these other schools in the SEC can say to you, or that they're sitting there spiking the ball and saying, ho, 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 here we come. We're Missouri. Yeah, you still got Connor Bazelak throwing the ball right now. Okay? Like, it's going to take a lot more than just one great recruiting class. Don't be scared. Don't be nervous, Razorback fans, which I know majority of you aren't. But don't look at what everybody else is doing. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you've done. Look at what you're building. Everyone counted you out with Sam Pittman. Everyone thought it was a joke that you had hired him. Everyone thought that you were going to finish dead last in the SEC West this year. Everyone thought that you were going to lose potentially every single SEC game except maybe Missouri. Everyone thought that this year. You can't beat Texas. There's no way you're going to beat A&M. And look what you did. Look what you were able to do in 2 years. In 2 years, you become the bottom dweller of the SEC to suddenly being a team that people have to really pay attention to and take seriously. That alone is going to get you far. And that alone is going to get you to the next level. You just got to keep it going. And you got to continue to build. But you know, Sam Pittman and his staff will definitely continue to do. This is it. The putt to win a tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. This is how you're running your business. Poor visibility because you're relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software. To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. It's the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. With visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, planning, budgeting, and more, NetSuite is everything you need to grow all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying ahead in all your competition. Over 27,000 businesses already use NetSuite, and right now, through the end of the year, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those who are ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/lockedonncaa. So head to netsuite.com/lockedonncaa for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing business. Again, that's netsuite.com/lockedonncaa. We're also brought to you by BetOnline and how it is. They've had you covered for the entire season, football season, that is, with odds and lines and props more than ever before. And we're getting into the postseason side of things when it comes to football. So betonline.ag remains your #1 spot for all sports action this season. So head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today To receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit, just use the promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. So head over to betonline.ag where the game starts.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so the Arkansas Razorbacks football team, we've talked about Arkansas offense and Arkansas defense and all those things, but I want to give a shout out to the special teams. I don't talk about them enough. They kind of always get overlooked in some ways and whatnot, but you got to give a shout out to how much they got better and how they developed as the season went on this year. Like, it's important. It's important to have special teams. But I feel like the only time special teams get talked about is when things are bad, where at the beginning of this season, they weren't good. You couldn't get lined up correctly on punts. You gave up some really bad punt returns in some cases because of that. You just didn't look good across the board. You were, fumbling kickoffs, like things like that. You just couldn't have. But suddenly, as the year went on, we stopped talking about it. We stopped complaining about it. And you know why? Because the special teams got better. I was thinking with Scott Fountain, who's the special teams coordinator for Arkansas. A lot of people were making fun of him, saying that he's, they calling him Scott Water Fountain because he couldn't figure out a way to make the team better and the special teams better and anything like that. Like, they were just constantly crapping on this guy. And the thing is that if you just look back to where the special teams were and where they ended up, it's night and day. Like, first off, it helps to have a kicker like Cam Little, who I'm not going to say he's automatic because he wasn't 100% on the year, but he's about as automatic as you would want out of a kicker. And he was a true freshman. Like, you still have 3 more years of him, which is just great. So you had him, who was incredible at being able to make some great field goals and some clutch field goals as well. You think about Reed Bauer. He's the punter, which the punting was pretty good, but also him being the fake field goal extraordinaire, being able to run for a first down against LSU and throw for a touchdown pass against Alabama. Like, yeah, okay, we'll take that. But, think about what he was able to do this year. And sadly, he's no longer here, but Vito Calvaruso entered the transfer portal. But the guy was on kickoff. Every single kick went to the end zone. It was a touchback. Like, you wanted that consistency right there. I mean, that was exactly what you need out of someone who's in charge of kickoff duties. And then you think about Nathan Perotti, the punt returner. He had a touchdown return or a punt return for a touchdown this year. He was able to get some big chunk plays here and there, one of them being against Missouri and all that. But you could always count on him to make plays there. And then, of course, Jordan Silver. How can you forget? He's the deep snapper, and he was up for the Deep Snapper of the Year award. I don't know how they judge that, but it's good enough for me. Obviously, somebody knows, and he was up for that as well. They got better and better and better as the season went on. And I think that people, Razorback fans especially, need to have a big thank you to Scott Fountain and to getting it right, fixing the problems that were going on. Because, man, that guy was going through so much hell, just catching it from everybody. And I was one of them where I'm like, you can't have these problems on special teams. Like, it was extremely frustrating. But then it became a collective unit where at the end of the year, suddenly you had no problems with anything. The kickoff was great. No problems there. You had faith in Cam Little hitting a field goal. Reed Bauer could punt the ball pretty well. Nathan Perotti could maybe get you some yards, get you a big gainer on a punt return. On kick return, it was kind of just meh, but you didn't always return kicks because of the way it would go for a touchback. So didn't have those opportunities as much. But still, you were able to get better. And I think that that's just more motivation and more of an affirmation that this team continues to get better across the board as the season goes on, where they're not going to be perfect. They're going to be frustrating. Obviously, the penalties were a problem this year. But if you just think about the stuff that makes the difference in these games, like how many games this year was Arkansas across the board more talented than the teams that they played? Like Texas, for instance. I don't think that Arkansas was far and away more talented across the board than Texas. I know they weren't against A&M or Georgia or Auburn or Alabama or LSU. Probably weren't against Missouri, maybe Mississippi State. But the point is that you weren't more talented than a lot of the teams you played this year. But what you were is that you were a well-coached team that was able to be the difference in winning and losing a lot of these games. You know, that Mississippi State game, you won the game because of your special teams. Mississippi State didn't have it. You know, against LSU, I know you just won it with some good defense too, but you were able to make the kick to win the game. You know what I'm saying? Like you were able to get that big play from the special teams that made the difference. You didn't turn the ball over a lot this year. You didn't throw picks. This did not happen. KJ did not throw interceptions. You didn't fumble the ball very often at all. You didn't give them opportunities. I know the Auburn game was probably the most detrimental one where you fumbled in the end zone and ended up being a touchdown. That was the difference in the game. But still, my point is that you had a well-coached team that the smallest things like that, like not turning the ball over, like not having bad special teams plays, like not having those things, those made the difference in games when you're not as talented or the other team is a lot more talented than you. So, again, kudos to Scott Fountain and to the Razorback special teams unit for getting better, because at the end of the day, that's what every team should want to do. I think that's what Arkansas did. And I think that it should give you a lot of motivation and excitement about next year heading into it as well. Folks, Built Bar. Simple as that. You've heard me talk about it. I think I've had Built Bar and talked about Built Bar every podcast that I've had since doing the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. But the reason is because it works. Like I don't tell you these things and I don't tell you about Built Bar if it's not incredible, because it's a protein bar that's healthy, it's convenient, and it tastes amazing with all the different flavors to choose from. They give you that extra fuel that you need, whether it's before a workout or during the workday. Sometimes when you're feeling a little down, it can get you going in the right direction and pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry. And it makes for great stocking stuffers. So be able to check it out and be able to make it a part of your Christmas holiday this year as well. They have some of the new flavors that you're going to have to check out and try out. Again, they have so many different ones to offer, and you can get variety packs. So if it's not just one, pick and choose the ones you want. If you go to built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15, you'll get 15% off your next order. Doesn't matter how many you order. You can order the entire store. That won't matter. Go over there to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Again, built.com, enter in promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, final segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Obviously, Arkansas Razorback basketball will be heading to North Little Rock and Simmons Bank Arena. The men's basketball team will be playing at 7 o'clock against Hofstra, so that should be pretty exciting. And, you know, I was thinking about this game, of course, being played in Simmons Bank Arena and how there's been a lot of great atmospheres that have been there for the past few years. And, you know, just seeing the excitement level that people have for Razorback basketball and coming together at Little Rock and being loud and, you know, selling out the arena no matter who they play. It's great because it's like, and I'm not trying to start anything, but I've always heard, well, in football, you can't do War Memorial because the opponent's never that good. Well, you do it in baseball and you do it in basketball in Little Rock. So obviously there are people that are still willing to go to the games regardless of who the opponent is, but that's neither here nor there. The thing is that North Little Rock and Simmons Bank Arena, it's always a great time. It's always a great atmosphere to have. And I was talking about this on my radio show yesterday, that you see the attendance numbers for these games in Little Rock for basketball and the energy and the noise level that is there. It just continues to show and continue to prove that this state is a basketball state. Like, trust me, we love our football. Don't get me wrong. Like, we love going to football games. We love tailgating. We love when football's good. If it was up to me, Football would be my first choice of being who's great. Like, we all know that. But when it comes to the like educated level of fanhood, like which sport that they're most educated on, that they understand the most, the one that they get all hyped up and more passionate about, basketball is about as big as it can get. Because not only are you able to have a great program like Arkansas here in the state, you also have been able to produce high level players to go to the University of Arkansas or to go elsewhere out of this state. High school basketball is a big deal. There's very, very big time high school basketball programs that are winning state championships, that are always involved in playing at the highest level and producing these great players too. And so, just across the state, from Northwest, Southwest, Northeast, Southeast corners, Central Arkansas, whatever it is, everyone loves basketball. Everyone loves watching basketball, and everyone has a passion for basketball. Now, I know, again, we could talk about which sport is more important or which sport people enjoy the most, but to me, basketball proves it in like having a game, for instance, in Simmons Bank Arena in North Little Rock against Hofstra, where the crowd is going to be electric and it's going to be packed out. Just goes to prove that. Basketball is a great product here in the state of Arkansas. It's important. It's part of our DNA. It's something that if you grew up in the 90s, you know exactly how good Arkansas basketball can be. Razorback basketball, and seeing some of the players that have been produced out of this state. Guys like Corliss Williamson and Bobby Portis and Daniel Gafford. You know, and you're seeing players that like Moses Moody being able to possibly take that next step and be kind of like a young star in the NBA. Like, you see these guys, and they're all from Arkansas. You know, and I know that he's got some disdain for Razorback fans, but even like Malik Monk, and he's at the Lakers like right now, he's from Arkansas. So like all these players that you see just come out of this state and take that next step, it's incredible. And the fans know it and they appreciate it too. Baseball's great, football's great, but basketball, I've always said Arkansas is a basketball state. They care about basketball more and they enjoy basketball more. And I don't see that being anything different in this weekend against Hofstra. And I can't wait to see what the Razorbacks look like after that terrible game against Oklahoma, how they come out. Are they going to be motivated? They're going to be pissed off? They're going to want to try to take on the world? Like, are they going to come out firing? Is the starting lineup going to look different? Like, what's going to happen? Because I don't think Eric Musselman was very accepting of what happened against Oklahoma this past weekend. So I would be shocked if something like that happened again. But either way, I'm excited about it. I can't wait to go. I know there's going to be a great crowd there as well. And hopefully we get to talk about how much better this team looked next Monday on the podcast as well after they beat Hofstra. But appreciate everybody listening into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNeighbors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you.